Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Tribe, you are in for a treat today, as my guest is a human fireworks show. Sparkles coming at you from every direction. And I've had the pleasure to finally meet her recently in Dallas, and she was a keynote speaker at an event I organized with my buddy. And I can promise you that she over-delivered and under-promised, over-delivered, one of those things. And now we're pickle pals, but that's for a story a little bit later. Lila Smith used to think that being a professional actress would be the best way for her to use her love of storytelling to make a difference that mattered most in the world. After spending 20 years training and 10 years professionally performing to great acclaim in New York City and around the U.S., she felt that there was more connection, more honesty, and more impact to be had offstage, IRL, in real life. And that's why Lila created Say Things Better, a 5-step method of intentional communication based on the best tools that she has learned in theater. And now she brings it worldwide to companies, to everybody. And she travels around the globe helping people and brands across cultures and industries to connect their ideal communication, to connect to their ideal communication partners. Lila, we met in person. Let's bring it back to offline.
It was a magical moment.
Let's take our offline back online. Lila, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that we can go from online to offline, back to online, because that's what we have social media for. It was originally created so that we could take those offline relationships and stop them from dying out just because we didn't have constant contact.
Exactly.
So now we have kind of constant cursory contact and a little bit of content and comments here and there, but it's great for just staying connected.
Absolutely. And I've had a chance to get to know you, but my tribe may not. So why don't we just bring my tribe up to speed a little bit and talk about your origin story, your superhero story? Like, when did you get bit by the spider back in the day, where we kind of are today?
I got bit by the acting spider before I ever even came out of the womb. I was 2 weeks early and I came out dancing, feet first. And my parents were like, I guess this is who we have. And that's kind of how it developed. I have this personality. If you're listening to me for even 5 seconds, I think you know who I am already. I think that that's just kind of how it is, that this is who I am. And my parents had no choice really but to put me into theater. Because for them, that was in New York, kind of a no-brainer. There are the arts here, there are the performing arts. And if my kid has this personality, let's put her up on a stage so that she can get the attention that she wants from not just us. Right.
Right. So, spread the wealth. Let someone, we ran out of time. They want someone else to absorb all that ball of attention. When was the first time that you took the stage in front of a big audience? How old are you?
Oh, a big audience? I mean, I was 5 when I was in Oliver, and there was like every class kid's parents were in the audience. So that was a little nerve-wracking for my first time. Perry Abramsky played Oliver, and Tasha Holness played Mr. Bumble.
Memory like an elephant over here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I can't even remember. I remember like everybody's names, but I can't remember I played the widow Corny. I was Tasha Holness's wife. And
wow. I mean, we could go through her whole IMDb here in a moment, but let's take it back a little bit here. So classically trained in acting, you've been on stages all over the country, to the highest levels. What was that, kind of moment when you're like, what, I'm going to take a step back and take this skill set, which we'll dig into in a little bit, and move away from acting full time? What was that moment? Was there that aha moment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, was there one moment? I remember there being a rehearsal that look, as an actor, the best thing is when you get to have rehearsal and performances and actually get to do the art that you want and not just be in the constant grind of the marketing, the self-promotion, the showing up, the inviting, the selling tickets, the fundraising, the everything that you do behind the scenes.
All behind the scenes.
Oh my gosh, the pay to play. the workshops with the casting directors just to get them to know you, it's exhausting. And it is so much work just to get to the point of the art. And the rehearsal is that art. And I loved a lot of it. But there was this one night that I was supposed to be going to rehearsal, and I just felt myself dreading it and thinking, God, I would rather do dishes or laundry or change diapers or literally anything else other than go to rehearsal right now. And
So you didn't feel
so
it. You didn't feel it in your heart.
I didn't feel it in my heart anymore. I felt like this is just, I'm telling my story, but nobody knows that. I'm using somebody else's words. This script is not enough for me to connect what I really feel to the people that are my communication partners. And when I felt like all of this struggle wasn't worth it for the payoff, when I was dreading the payoff, I knew.
Yeah,
You should only be an actor or an entrepreneur or a musician or any kind of crazy career like that if it is the only thing you can imagine yourself doing.
So coming out of school, were you always like professionally, your paycheck, did it always come from acting? Did you have any other, professional or corporate jobs?
I did. Yeah. Actually, a lot of actors have day jobs that are like waiting tables or bartending because the schedules are flexible. But I negotiated my way into flexible schedules with more traditional career paths. And
Cool.
the last job that I had was the director of e-commerce at a company called DNA Footwear in New York City, a multi-store location and online channel footwear company. So I worked there for 3.5 years. That was like my last job that I had before I left to do the messaging consulting and communication workshops that I do now.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second too. So you've had some really solid experience on both sides, and I think that's
Yeah.
really which just makes you so special about your background and what you do. So based on your experience, I mean, where do you really see people failing in communications in the current professional world?
Making assumptions all the time. Expectations get muddied when somebody has assumed that someone else communicates the way that they do, or that they have all the information that they need, or that they have intentionally, left them out of something. It's assumptions. It's always assumptions. That's like the biggest problem. And the other problem that I see is that people aren't intentional with their communication.
Right.
So people are going to receive a message anyway, whether you deliver it on purpose or not. And people just communicating without intention means you kind of throw a ball in the air and see what happens rather than throwing it to someone who's going to catch it.
Interesting. So let's talk about the thought process before you came to the modern version of, Say Things Better method and workshops right now. So talk to us a little bit about that workshopping process or theater. I guess that's a theater term, right? Workshopping.
Yeah, sure. You mean like rehearsal?
Yeah, I mean, how did you formulate it? What were the steps behind it before you got to the final formulation where it is today?
Well, what happened was I had people reaching out to me all the time because I constantly do this. I'm constantly like, oh, just give me your phone and I'll text back for you, or people are like, I have this thing to write, but I don't know what words to use. Can you just tell me what to say? You always say things better.
You just say better.
People say this to me all the time. You say things better. You say things better. I've heard so many times in my life from a lot of different people, and I appreciate it, but I really always felt like that's not that special. Like people could do what I'm doing if they thought about it for a second, but people don't know how to think about it. So when people started offering to pay me to do this, I was like, all right, this is a real thing. One, yes, I'll take your money. Yeah. And
PayPal, Venmo, cash, traveler's checks, gift cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything. I'll take all of it. I'll take all of the currency. If it's currency, I'll take it. And it was like this a moment of, I didn't realize that it was valuable enough for people to pay for it until people from my LinkedIn community started offering and reaching out to me and saying, I hear you when you talk in the comments, or I see the things that you write. You always say things better than other people do. Can you help me? And so I decided to make a business out of it. And I was doing messaging consulting without having the methodology behind it. But I asked myself, when I was doing some reflection, I was doing some like, okay, who am I? Why am I feeling still so stuck? I was at this company, I had a good job, I was doing well, and I loved the team that I was working with. And yet I still felt like this isn't it either. Okay, acting wasn't it. Leading this department isn't it. what is it for me?
What
I
is it?
know that I have something. What is it? What is it? And I just had to go on this hunt through myself, this discovery journey. I did UMAP with Kristen Sherry, who created UMAP. So I got assessments of my strengths, my values, my motivated skills, and my personality-driven interests. So I learned a lot about myself and who I was to begin with. And Kristen, who created UMAP, she said to me, it'd be interesting. I'd love to see what would happen if you were like a communication coach or something, or speaker. And I was like, well, that's sweet. That's cute, Kristen, but like, I need a job.
Job, paying job.
Yeah, right. Like I need money. And to me at the time, that meant having a job at someone else's company where I work full time and they pay my paycheck, and the paycheck goes into my direct deposit into my bank account. And that's how I have money. And that was like it for me, because I knew that acting wasn't a way to consistently have money. But I did know that consistently having money so far meant paycheck. So I still was reluctant. And then my friends, Amy Blatchka and Bruce Kasanoff, published this book called I Am, which is a journal of first-person affirmations. And they're not always positive. Some of it is like, I am distracted, I am disorganized. And it gave these like really cool, beautiful, poetic phrases to read through and then ruminate on. And there are these pages opposite that were blank. The purpose was that you would draw things or write things or doodle and kind of use it for discovery. Yeah. So between like knowing myself from UMAP, having I Am, this book to play around with, and also having a LinkedIn community where I could kind of try things out and see what resonated with people, and doing a workshop with Gia Farakis, who created One Thought, One Action, a method for theater practitioners to use in rehearsal. Between all of this, my One Thought, One Action creative life practice, OTOA CLP, and my UMAP, and my LinkedIn community, and just
all these things coming together.
Everything. It just kind of came together at this one time that I was doing this messaging consulting. And I was like, what is it? I know all this stuff, but what is it that I'm doing? What is the process? My e-commerce mind kicked in and I'm like, well, let's take inventory. Let's see what we have here. And I started looking at my messaging consulting process as a method, as a series of items. So what have I done? Well, I started with, what's the motivation? What's your mission statement? What's your purpose, your why? You've heard all these words before. In theater, one character's arc over an entire play is motivated by their super objective. That's a term from Stanislavski, who Konstantin Stanislavski created the Stanislavski system, which is the basis of what you hear of when you hear method acting. So this was the first method that was given to actors, and it started with that one step. So I was like, well, in messaging, I'm doing the same thing. I'm starting with, what is it that motivates you? What is your motivation? What drives you? So that you can have something that holds you accountable to intentional communication beyond just that moment. And then the next thing I was doing was saying, well, who are you talking to, and where are you trying to reach them, and what's the purpose? What are you trying to, how do you know that this is a win with your message? How do you know that you got something out of it? And that was the same as, again, in the Stanislavski system, finding your objective. As an actor, we would find our character's objective for one scene, what that person wanted to get out of the other person in the scene for it to feel like a win for them. And then we would just like relentlessly pursue that objective on stage, regardless of what the script says, because we didn't know, our character didn't know that it was scripted, that they wouldn't get it by the end of the scene. We just had to go get it.
Interesting. So let's talk about how that translated into you coming up with the method for Say Things Better. And I don't want to give too much away, because I don't want everyone to take this free podcast and take it as gospel and turn it into their own workshop. But let's break it down a little bit so anyone listening could really understand, what are those 5 steps in the method?
It's your motivation, that big goal overall, what you want to do with your communication in life. That's number 1, your motivation. Step 2 is your objective for one communication event. What do you want out of this one email, this one tweet, this one post, this one conversation, this one meeting, that it's successful if this has happened? Step 3 is your communication partner's objective, understanding that there are other people in the room with you too, and you can step off the stage, be in real life, and help that character achieve their objective too. Number 4 is your toolbox, the things that you have that are different about you as opposed to anyone else who provides this service. You have all of your differentiators, and then you just have your basics, your quality, making sure that the product, the offering is really, truly there. You've tested it, you've stood behind it, because there is nothing that messaging can do if the quality of your offering isn't there first. And then the 5th step is verb your values. And I see you nodding, like you have something to say about that?
No, I was going to dig into verbs. I have the word verb. Yeah. Verb is a word. Verb is the word. Let's talk about verbs. Let's unpack the verb one for a little bit. You and I did this on our first conversation here.
Yeah.
And I found it a really interesting, introspective process too, about how I communicate. You know, I have a little bit of stylistic the way I communicate. It comes a little bit from the professional world. It comes a little bit from I'm not going to use the word street because I ain't no street. I'm a little Jewish boy from Brooklyn Island. But
well, like, we have streets in Brooklyn.
Right, of course. Lots of streets in Brooklyn. Let's unpack verbs and what they mean and how we could be more impactful with our use of them.
So verbs, when I think of using verbs, I think of them as little coaches in my head to ask me, am I doing this with my communication? Am I taking this action? And a verb is an action word. So we decide what actions we want to take with our communication towards our communication partners. This is based on Stella Adler's work with actions and tactics for any actors or theater people who are listening. But this for me means not just am I trying to use a tactic to have an effect on someone, but it's coming from a place of my authentic values. And this is how we can communicate authentically and intentionally rather than instinctively. Sometimes we think that our first instincts are how we are authentic. And you hear people a lot saying, well, that's just me. You know, I don't want to have to edit who I am. I don't want to have to edit what I say. But what if you really care about the person you're connecting with? And
is that selfish? Yeah. Is that selfish?
Yeah, it is. It is selfish. It's selfish to want to give into our lowest selves because they are not our only selves.
They're not our best selves either.
No, we have way better stuff. We have our values. We just sometimes forget them when we're not intentional in our communication. So I work with people to find those values, turn them into verb form, and then use those verbs as little internal coaches to guide their communication.
So I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, this works both, you know, verbally spoken as well as written, but what are some of the nuances between when you're actually having a actual conversation with somebody versus putting it in writing with the verbs?
It's never something that you write. Like, look, do you have a book or something near you right now?
No.
Or, okay, pick out any text message from your phone.
Right. Okay. Let's
pick one that's like clean. This is, you know, a family audience, right?
Great. Sure.
So it can be anything. The important part is that they're not my words. These are somebody's.
You want to say like something I wrote to somebody?
Doesn't matter. Any short sentence.
I wrote, just ping me.
Just ping me. Perfect. Just ping me. It is an instructive sentence. You're giving somebody something to do. Just ping me. Now, if I give you the context that you have this line, these words, just ping me, but the intention is to comfort me with your communication. How are you going to say just ping me if your intention is to comfort?
Yeah, I mean, I would switch it around a little bit and put more empathy into it as well. So, you know, when you're ready to chat, please reach out. I'll be here for you, or something like that. I probably would.
What if the words stayed the same? I mean, that's a great way to check your words, you know. But if you're thinking about the tone, like how something comes across, if we're just on the phone and these are your words, just ping me.
I would change my inflection. I would change my inflection.
You would do it naturally.
Yeah, like, hey, Lila, when you're feeling up to it, just ping me.
Right. Just ping me. Just ping me.
And let me make sure it's just ping me. It's weird. It's kind of dirty. I'm not even going to go that direction.
Just ping me.
Just ping me.
Just ping. And then, okay. So
we digress.
What if it's like to flirt? You know, just ping me.
Hey, just ping me. Just ping me over here. No, I love it too. And I want everyone, because I don't want to go too deep into this, because I really want to drive everyone to Lila's method and learn a lot more about it. She's got a ton of content out there, and I think it's critical. You know, if you're in the business world, and I think all of us could use this honing, this polishing, this, you know, ever learning, ever improving part upon ourselves where we can be better. And I think that's something that's very important that Lila provides. So I definitely want to drive everyone to that. I'll be linking that, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. One of the other things I truly admire about what you do is your ability to network. And I think that's in combination with how well you communicate. So what do you really think has been your true success in the world of, let's start with online networking, specifically on LinkedIn?
I think it's just that I care and I'm interested. So it starts with a true, genuine curiosity in who people are, what they do, what they want other people to know about them so that I can help them connect. You and I were connected by my friend Rena
Yep.
Friedman Watts. I love Rena so much,
Yep.
and I've never met her in person.
Me neither.
Like, that's on my bucket list, you know, for my 2020 list. Like, I want to get that done.
Well,
I
maybe
want to
we
meet
should all go
and
to
hug Rena.
I said to her, I go, why don't we do a
Let's
Chicago
it.
event? I'm trying to get a Chicago event. I got buddies in Chicago.
I would love it.
It's
I
equidistant.
do too.
We're going to make that work.
I'm so happy to do that.
Rena, put a Chicago event together.
And this is how it happens. You know, you ask how it happens. This is how. Because you're in conversation with someone that you actually like and connect with, because someone else that you actually like and connect with introduced you. It really doesn't take a lot more.
No, and exactly. And this is how our Dallas event, this is exactly how the Dallas event came together. I was introduced to Julian through a mutual friend. Julian and I built up that phone conversation, so we'll call that in real life. The event came together. We were looking for a keynote speaker. I mentioned something to Rena. Rena's like, hey, you should reach out to Lila. You and I connected. We hit it off. I knew there was value in your presentation. We put it all together. The event happened. You crushed the keynote. We did pretty well in our, panel conversation. And now we're here today. Right? It's not rocket science.
And,
like, that's
you
it.
did so well.
Thank you.
Like, I know that I did the keynote, but you did so much to put everything together, and all the branding and the event and the people who came and everybody else, like the panel that you pulled together, everybody who was there. We had such incredible discussion because the people you invited and the people who showed up to hear what we had to say were exactly the communication partners for that event.
Curation.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And that takes a lot of work.
That's networking. It just starts with thinking about it.
Yeah, and for me, that event was a manifestation of my network is my net worth.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is my canvas and this is my palette. It's funny because I was having a conversation with my buddy the other day who's an incredible guitar player, and that's who we're talking about. That's his creative outlet. He's a talented guitar player. He creates music. He writes music. He's just incredible. And for me, I don't have I love music. And I feel like I could play a mean air, like piano, like that's kind of my skill set. But like for me, this is my creative outlet, this podcast, my networking and creating events. And that's something that's really shown through for me. Now, do you find that like teaching in your workshops, right, brings back some of that true passion of acting? Like, how are you still getting that acting out there? Yeah.
Everything that I do in my method is the stuff that I loved about acting. It's connection with another person. And it used to be in stage through the walls of this text that somebody else wrote for the purpose of telling a story. But the story that I want to tell now is whatever it is that happens magically between people who really genuinely connect. That's the real story. It's more improvisational. It's more listening. It's more true to the moment and the real people in the real world. The impact that I want to have is that connection.
Yeah,
so now I get to decide my objectives, not just my characters. And I'm doing the other stuff, the creative work, all the time. And before I forget, I want to ask you to introduce me to your guitar player friend who writes songs.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about, you're obviously a natural extrovert, but not everyone, has this ability to put themselves out there. And in this digital world of creating an online brand and an online presence, how would you coach somebody who may be, a little bit timid or a little bit shy to put themselves out there? And they're like, I know I got to do it. I mean, if we're going back to the panel, one of the pieces I talked about was, establishing your online brand and reputation, and that's through thought leadership, creating content and videos. But how do you get people out of your shell? How do you coach them? How do their shell?
I say this: start with something that makes sense and feels good to you. First of all, social media isn't for everybody. And that's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah. And also, though, introverts love social media because they get to type something, edit it, and walk away from it if they want to. They can have as much or as little interaction with other people as they want, and they get to control it from the safety and comfort of their own environment.
Exactly.
So it's great for introverts to have meaningful communication on their terms.
Yeah.
I love social media for introverts.
No, that's certainly good. Lila, what's the best joke that you've heard recently?
I only have one.
Hold on. You have one quiver of jokes. One joke that's in your quiver.
It's not a good joke either, but I like it. Okay. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
To.
To who?
It's to whom, Adam?
Intentional dead air. Intentional dead air. We're gonna leave the intentional dead air in there for a minute. Lila, what's that's a good one.
The worst joke. It's the only one I know.
Can I give you a new knock knock joke?
Yeah.
Oh no. It won't be a knock knock joke. I mean, I'm full of dad jokes.
Okay.
All right. How do you make a tissue dance?
How do you make a tissue dance?
You put a little boogie in it.
Ew.
All right, let's bring this back over here a little bit. You are somebody that I value as a wealth of information, both like strategically, tactically, spiritually, I guess, because we're pickle pals now. But what is, I ask this question to a lot of guests because I love the perspective on it. What is the single best piece of advice that you have ever received that you take action on every single day?
Never walk on stage like an apology.
Let's unpack that a little bit for those that may not get that.
So let's say you show up in a room and you feel out of place, rather than feeling like this is your room as much as it's anybody else's. Your communication can never be fully intentional if you don't feel like you have the right to communicate to begin with. So if you walk into the room like, I'm sorry I'm here, everybody. I'm sorry to be breathing your oxygen. I'm sorry to be taking up your time, rather than recognizing the gift that you are to the people around you. You're not going to be in a position of power to communicate with intention.
But is that a mindset? Is that like a self-defeating prophecy, self-fulfilling and self-defeating?
Absolutely. If you walk on stage knowing, I'm not going to walk on stage like an apology. I'm going to walk on stage like an exclamation point, or at least an open set of arms. I'm going to walk on stage like an embrace. You walk into a room and you bring the intention with you for what you want to do with the people there. If you walk in and you see this sometimes on social media, you see these apologies, like people spending 15 seconds talking about the background noise or the fact that they scratched their face. And then they're like, oh, I guess I had an itch. And like, we didn't need you to say that to us.
Yeah,
we don't care about your itchy face. We care about what you're saying. Like, we can forgive you for almost anything. Don't talk about the background noise. Don't talk about what you're wearing. Don't talk about the things that you're apologizing for that have nothing to do with the value of the content you're delivering. Never walk on stage like an apology.
I love it. And it's interesting too, the more public speaking that I'm doing, the more opportunities I have to shine. Like I'm finding this confidence in myself that like I knew was there, but like I always had like some kind of self-doubts about, do I look okay? Am I like, how do I sound? And like really owning kind of who I am and who my voice. And I think that adds like a level of confidence and authority, and it really helps connect with the audience as well.
Well, let's talk about that authority for a minute, because if you, let's say you go on stage and you're fidgeting, you look nervous, you're shifting and you're playing with the clothes that are too hot or uncomfortable, and you are trying to talk about a subject that doesn't actually really mean anything to you. So you can't really speak with authority and you're trying to fake it. What happens is we as the audience sense your discomfort. And then we are shifted into the position of taking care of you. Polite applause, polite laughter, not genuine, authentic reactions and responses. We're trying to take care of you in your discomfort, which means that we are the powerful person in the room. We're sort of the parent who's there to like stroke your hair and tell you it's going to be all right, rather than being there to observe you in your authority, giving us the value that only you can. That's what happens when you walk on stage like that.
So I just got the recording of our event, which I'll talk about it offline. I'll get that over to you in a little bit. Cool. But we're our toughest critics. And after the event, I really took some time and I thought, I was like, oh, what I do right? What I do wrong? And in my mind, I'm like, well, I could have done this better. I could have been better at that. But then I went back and watched it. I'm like, I wasn't that bad. I made people laugh. Like I sounded, at least half intelligent.
Everybody loved you.
And I appreciate that. And I think that there was like, I fed off the dynamic, but there was still something like in my mind where like, I am my toughest critic. I mean, do you find that a lot with acting?
Oh, I find that with myself constantly. I also happen to have anxiety, which a lot of people wouldn't know if they met me, but I like take CBD oil from Holistic Hemp Company. And if anybody wants, I have a 20% discount code. It's Lila20, Lila20 at
Love it.
Holistic Hemp Company. And I use this stuff because otherwise I will obsess about little things that no one else will notice or care about. Shadows on my face, or somebody walking by in the background. All of the little things that I'm telling you now not to apologize for, I personally obsess over
You're
those
adding
things.
context. Yeah.
The lighting and everything. It's just, it makes me insane. So like I do feel so much insecurity about it that it almost stops me constantly. And I have to be really focused on my motivation just to get it done, just to get up there and do it.
And thank you for sharing, and thank you for being vulnerable. And you know, the word vulnerable is so interesting to me because that's something I've really taken to heart over the last, year plus, like being very open with my story. And like, there was a lot of things about the optics of my history that I kind of kept behind or hidden because I was ashamed of it. Right. But then once I opened up and shared my story,
so relatable.
Not only that, but it just felt like this weight was lifted off of me, and I was just able, and all these things, like all the synergy happened. I mean, we talk about the Gary Vee, thing that happened in Dallas, and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't.
Unbelievable.
It was ridiculous, but like that wouldn't have happened if I still kept that all inside. There's no way that would have happened. And I think that's something that we have in common, is being open and vulnerable.
Well, the verb form of that is to entrust.
To entrust.
Yeah, because you're entrusting somebody else to be a safe space for you. And what happens then is that you create this trust, this trusted bond. When you're vulnerable and you open up to somebody else, it's like you're saying, I'm setting the expectations here that we're in it for each other. And it's not just me being in it for myself. I'm sharing something that is vulnerable, that is potentially embarrassing or a source of shame. And I'm trusting you to be a source of comfort and a safe space for me. I'm confident in our connection. I am this confident in our connection.
That's powerful. Lila, I talk a lot about the word legacy, right? And each one of us has their own legacy and this vision of legacy, and it changes as we get older and things change in our life. But what legacy do you envision leaving behind when your time has come? Hopefully not too soon. When your time has come, how do you want people to remember you by?
Oh, they're going to say she ate a lot of pickles and made a lot of people really happy. I mean, I really do think that it's going to be a legacy of connection, of both, the way that I feel in person with other people, that I make connections, that I connect other people to each other, that I connect people to their own value by putting it into words. I connect those words out to the people who are going to pay them for whatever it is that they do. It's just connection.
I love it. And I think that's another reason why we're so connected here. And Lila, to this date, what do you feel is your greatest accomplishment in life? It's a big question. It's one of those
I mean, I'm still working on like the accomplishments that I want to set out to do, but it's actually one of my biggest challenges is to stop and appreciate myself for how far I've come, to acknowledge things, because I'm very, very momentum driven. And I will go without actually appreciating accomplishments at all. But when I look back and I see that I was in a place where I felt dark, I felt disconnected, I felt alone, I felt I didn't have my theater community anymore. I felt I didn't have the relationship that I wanted. I felt that I wasn't being seen for the value that I really had anywhere. And I took responsibility personally to make sure that happened. And I took actions. And I think that even if it didn't have any results, and I never impacted anyone, which isn't the case, just the fact that I decided to get unstuck and take some kind of action of self-discovery, that is what I'm the most proud of achieving, that first step.
I love it. And it made me think of something too, as you're saying it. I look back, and this episode's not about me, but like I was looking back too and kind of thinking in my head what my greatest accomplishment was. And it triggered a thought in my head, that moment, I was in between a couple of things, wondering what I was going to do next. And I was thinking about that lowest point. And I remember it vividly that, and this is no offense to anyone that drives an Uber or works at Home Depot or any of those stores, but there was a moment where I was like, maybe that's what I should be doing, and maybe that's all I was, maybe that's what I was supposed to be doing. And then I was like, no, I have, there's a greater purpose for that. And I look back on that moment, and then I could kind of gauge how far I've come in that amount of time. And I think it's important to add perspective and think about where you were
Yeah.
and where you are now.
Yeah. That's interesting, to think about like you in your moment of knowing that there was something more for you. I think a lot of people have that moment, and some of us many times, maybe every day, maybe 10 times a day, we think, isn't there something more that I am meant for? And a lot of people leave the question hanging in the air until it dissolves.
And then what?
And then what?
Regrets.
And I think that,
Regrets are left. Regrets, which are the dirtiest word in the world. Regrets are terrible. Lila, I could answer this for you, but I'm not going to. What would you say is your superpower that you do better than anybody in this planet?
I think just connection. I mean, I don't know that like I do it better than
I don't know
anybody
about better,
else,
but what do you think
like
that you do awesome?
I do have a way that other people can use, to connect as themselves. So whether or not like they connect the way that I do, I have this method that can help people connect the way that they will, using things from their toolbox, who they are. And being able to give that to others is my greatest joy and gift. But being able to truly connect immediately with other people, I think that's probably my superpower.
I love it. And last but not least, and I ask this question to every guest, and it's probably my favorite question in the world.
Okay.
When things are not going well, because not every day is sunshine and rainbows and happy trolls
Yeah.
and pots of gold and that, and like you need to look something to pull you up, right? Things aren't going that well. You're having a real shitty day. And on the flip side of that, when it's awesome, things are firing on all cylinders, a million people just signed up for your course. You just got back from a killer workshop. What do you look to for gratitude? What do you look to pull you up? Lila Smith, what is your North Star?
It's the people around me. And actually this just happened a couple of days ago, not last night, but the night before. I got an email that something that I was going to be doing on October 23rd, which is 12 days from now, by the way, from when we're recording this, it wasn't going to happen. And this was going to be, a high dollar day for me. And that plus this thing I'm doing in November, just like two big gigs, basically. We're going to be able to support my desire to take all of December just for give back time.
Oh, look at that.
And it fell through, this thing for October 23rd. And so I didn't have that anymore. And it was such a hard crash for me because I had already started planning in my head all of the impact that I was going to have during my give back month. And I was so depressed about this and so miserable and thinking about everything that, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be trying to work in that industry. I shouldn't be, so confident in my programs. And I mean, really talking myself down. And as a communication expert, I have all of the words to be a negative self-talker. Yeah. And I will talk myself down to death. If anybody who cared about me heard the way that I talk to myself, they would be furious with me. And I go into this, like, I went into this tailspin. This is a real thing, as part of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, even for those of us who are successful and doing well and have plenty of money and plenty of opportunities,
right? You
still get thrown. And these things make a big dent and crash you if you don't have something to lean on. Number one, I have my number one strength is strategic. So I can pretty much rebound and make a new plan pretty fast. But if I don't feel the confidence in myself, I'm completely detached from my strengths. I'm completely detached from my toolbox. I don't see what my resources are until I talk to the people that I trust who remind me of what they see in me too. So the other night I called my friend Kellen. She was there for me and talked me off the ledge, and then by the next morning I already had 2 new gigs that were going to start chipping away at like the financial hit. But it was that moment first for me of having someone I could just trust to be at that lowest point around. My circle, my community, my immediate best friends, like that's really the source of my strength.
I love it. Absolutely. Lila, thank you so much for your time here. I'm really looking forward to continuing our relationship and awesome stuff in the near future.
Me too.
And closing thoughts here, I connected with Lila through a mutual connection, Rena, who we spoke about before, who shares a superpower of mine, and Rena and I and Lila too, we're all connection conduits. We make things happen, whether it be, it doesn't matter if we make a freaking penny off it. If we connect two different people and they make magic, that's really, what matters to us. But what is interesting is that, before Raina and I connected on Lila and I were already connected to my Dallas contacts. It was this whole circle of connection that already happened. So it was extremely serendipitous, and we were able to make that happen really quickly. And I preach this all the time, and I hope this is proof in point to take your online connections offline and watch this magic blossom and bloom. It's really true. And Lila is a triple threat. She knows how to connect, communicate, and use her powers to persuade for good. And she has parlayed her training and experience in acting and now teaching corporate professionals how to communicate better, a skill that is highly needed and in high demand. And many of us are not conscious of how we say things and how the way they affect the listener. We talked about this before. It's kind of selfish. It is. And this is a skill that's attainable to master, and it just takes practice and mindfulness. And I truly hope that you found this episode both entertaining, hopefully we're an entertaining pair over here, and educational, and found some key takeaways to put into your practice so you could be a better communicator and really be the best that you could be professionally and personally. And I truly value my relationship with you, Lila, and I look forward to continuing to build it. And you are my pickle pal forever. Where could folks connect with you? Where could they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can look up Lila Smith. It's Lila. You can also just look up Say Things Better with the company page, the hashtag, go to saythingsbetter.com. And you can find me on Instagram at Lila Lasagna.
Her Instagram is awesome, and I will have the links to everything below when we drop this. Lila, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time today.
Back at ya.
Awesome. Good stuff. And to everyone listening at home, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Please be sure to follow us on all the social media channels, links below. Click, engage, subscribe, comment, share. And remember, take your online offline. Thank you for joining us, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.